All right, folks, onward to the next film. This one was part of the Midnight Madness block that was at Hollyshorts Film Festival. Welcome to you, Benjamin Feldman. He did a lovely little short film, 7 minutes long, called Whenever You're Ready. First question I want to talk about is Midnight Madness in and of itself infers a whole lot of craziness is happening within this block. Is that a compliment to you? Meaning, some people might think that your film is not quite maddening enough. Does that make sense?
I was super excited about actually being in Midnight Madness block itself. I like these sort of films because, I like films that take chances and that are dedicated to, absurd, silly, and ridiculous ideas,
Sure.
sort of like my film as well. And, I sort of always imagine my film playing past midnight because, that's where I imagine this sort of scene would take place late night at some Hollywood, down and out place. So, I was super excited to be included in that to the point that's where we submitted because we thought that would give us the best shot to be with the weirdos, I guess I'd say.
That makes perfect sense, of course. All right. I wanted to start off talking about Benjamin the person, because believe it or not, people in the industry are still people. They're not just directors or writers all the time, of course. So start off talking to me a bit about, I know you're in the past, you have been the winner of Best Adapted Screenplay. So I want to talk about screenplay theory for a second. In order to become the best, I'm guessing that it takes a multitude of different things within a screenplay. For you personally, what's the most important thing that needs to be strong within any screenplay you write?
So I'd say it's different really for every idea, but overall it's almost like this sense of like, say you have a title comes to you and you just feel this sort of magnetism towards that title because it drums up these images in your mind. But at the
Okay.
same time, I could be listening to car music, hear a certain song and say, "Oh, I need to make a scene that has this," and that scene leads me to a whole movie idea. But the situation, like, that's really just the inspiration. But I mean, to be honest, once you get past that, it's all about structuring and
Right.
essentially just laying down, essentially I think you need 8 to 6 scenes that really catch someone's eye, and then you can fill in between.
Okay.
uh, so that's really how I see it. And if I can, if I can get 8 scenes in my mind that are really sort of, I guess, eye-catching, moving, they'll remember these scenes, then I have something to work with, then I can fill in the gaps.
That makes perfect sense, of course. Now, in this case, it was an adapted screenplay. So talk to folks about that, because sometimes I think that people doing an original screenplay versus adapted screenplay, it's an automatic assumption for a lot of people to say, oh, it's adapted, it's much easier. Is that in fact the case?
No, I don't think that's the case at all. I think any sort of script writing situation is hard in itself.
Yep.
It's just different. It's a different process. And, you have to sort of respect the original source material. And in the other situation, you're just sort of going off on your own. And that can be difficult because the ideas have to come from your brain and your experiences. But it's hard in either context because when you're given ideas you still have to take them and make them your own. So
Sure.
either side is difficult, so there's no really easy route to script writing, I'd say.
Remember that, folks, because over time, I know a lot of people get very, not frustrated per se, but just, it's difficult to try to continue to go on and on and on and on. Because at a certain point, all of us writers are like throwing it against the wall, like, I'm done with this. You know what I mean? Tell me a bit about that. I feel like writers, including myself, are just anal to a degree, meaning we just can't ever leave it alone, can't ever walk away, can't be 100% satisfied. So tell me how you know, or how maybe someone else can know when it's just overkill now. At what point are you at the overkill button?
Well, if I had that answer, I think I'd be
I knew it. Darn
but
it.
yeah, I mean, that's sort of always the struggle when you're working on a creative project, is like, do you feel pulled to it enough that it's worth sort of going through the trials and oh, I'm a terrible writer, this doesn't make any sense, like
Right.
those sort of thoughts bouncing around in your head. But it's like, yeah, I mean, you just got to get to the point where the script sort of pulls you in. That's really all I can say, because it's hard to know where an idea is going to go until you sort of take it as far along the road as you can.
Oh, I agree with that, definitely. And, you know, writing on paper versus telling a story, meaning you've been a director 3 different times. So, if I were to ask you to tell me, do you feel that you're better suited being in the director position, or would you continue to prefer to be doing the writing and just kind of continuing to stay away from the camera?
It's neither, I'd say, because, ideally, I'd like to do both, and I sort of think writing is a different part of my brain, and it's almost like a different sort of
Right.
character because, writing's this very solitary, you're creating the world, and that's, an incredible experience because it's fun to, world build and make these characters, and then they seem to act on their own when you really get into it. And that's when it gets really fun. But at the same time, I love directing and, I like to think that I think in images. So it's sort of a give and take of what I would prefer to do. Ideally, the most ideal situation is to have your writing directed by you. But as you know, that's a quite difficult process.
Yes, it is. And here's the other thing. As a director, you personally, as you're talking about seeing these images in your head, do you struggle or do you think the actors make it easier for you in some way to kind of bring a new or different look to those images?
I mean, the actors themselves, I would say it just changes. Like you write the script and then you bring the actors in and they say the words and then it feels different. And you
Yeah,
try to keep the actors close to, the idea that you had in your head originally for
yeah,
them, but it's never going to be exact. So you have to make adjustments. And that's when it really comes to life. And it is sort of nerve-wracking because you have this baby that you think is great and the actors come in and maybe this line doesn't work in this person's mouth and maybe you
right.
need to say it like this. So yeah, that's definitely like a point of tension, I'd say, like in the production process, but once you get past it, it's like that's when it gets fun.
No, I imagine so. Directors and I sometimes like to talk about this, so I want to pick your brain on equipment.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to have their go to. And frankly, one of the things that fascinates me is so many people on one side will say, oh, yeah, you can use an iPhone and it's all good. And then on the other side of the fence, they're like, no, we're still all about the cameras and setups and all that stuff. Where do you stand on the whole iPhone thing?
I go sort of back and forth again, I'd say, because the situation depends on, what production resources and what sort of legitimate money resources you have.
Right.
And I'm very, I love beautiful images. I love a Zeiss lens, I love a big sensor. And we were lucky enough on our film, the cinematographer had access to a Sony Venice. So we used the beautiful camera,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
which was amazing. Yeah, I'd say that if you have resources where you can use these cameras that are nicer, I would go all for it. But at the same time, like certain production situations, people I feel like are harming themselves by having this insistence on using these large cameras
Yeah.
instead of iPhones, because I do see iPhones just like a really easy route if you have a really great, simple idea to just get something done. And sometimes, and I think a lot of these film festivals don't really, at the end of the day, care that much about production value. And you can pull it off with an iPhone to where you can still, if you don't have the resources, get a really good idea out. And they shoot 4K, they look pretty, and
Right.
I did with them, and it's obviously less than a cinema camera, but it's
Sure.
pretty damn good.
Now, because you're younger, there's another interesting question here for you. Last time I attended the NAB convention, they had just shown some of the newest technology, meaning shooting in 8K, etc. But as we all know, I don't believe cinemas, right? Cinemas are still not at the point where they can do 8K technology, right?
Yeah,
So,
there's some, but yeah.
well, that's what I mean. So overall, I mean, I hear filmmakers sometimes even saying, "Oh, we want to shoot it in the best quality," so they're more inclined to go up to the 8K. So 4K versus 8K, have you even had experience with the 8K or known anybody who has done something like that? Because I have a hard time finding people even doing that. Well, maybe Hollywood, I guess. Are we at that point yet?
Well, I don't think we're even close to that point. I think it's
Okay.
sort of exciting new technology, and
Yes.
I know cinematographers who've shot like large format 8K, shots for music videos. There's no really need, and it's more that people are super excited to do this and are excited about just this resolution. And at the same time, when you shoot in 8K, you have so much information that you can almost be lazy with your filmmaking because you don't have to really make decisions on shots, because I know with 8K I can punch into a pretty tight close up from a wide shot
Okay.
because I'm still going to have focus and the pixels are still going to be strong because when I punch in, I'm really just going down to HD.
Well, right.
Yeah, so it's a great way to sort of cover your bases if you're on a time crunch. I sort of go against it because I think you should try to make those shot choices at the beginning and be confident in those as opposed to, waiting to the editing room because then it just gets chaotic. You don't know what to take. Do I punch
Yep.
in? Do I take my wide shot? Like these are decisions that need to be made in pre-production, not the editing bay.
Amen to that one. Absolutely. Let's talk education a bit. How did you end up at Indiana University?
So I originally went to Indiana because I wanted to be a business major. Yeah, so that's where I originally went. They have a great business school. And, I had this obsession with film, of course, simultaneously, but that seems, very unfeasible to be a filmmaker at certain points in your life. But eventually, after a year, I was like, I can't do this. I need to do filmmaking. So I dove head first. And it turns out, Indiana had a great media school and they just got a massive Canon donation. So we had,
Oh,
beautiful
nice.
cameras and access to great production gear. And, I ended up doing a 17-minute film my senior year. That was just great. We got to rent out all this gear and, we had multiple shooting days and it was just a fantastic experience.
Okay.
But Indiana isn't my only education film. I'd say my biggest education was I went for a semester to FAMU International in Prague,
Right. I saw that.
which is just the best place, best film school, such interesting teachers. I'd say I learned more in that semester than I've learned like in 3-4 years of college. All these teachers are cinematographers working in the Czech film industry. They're directors, editors who have shot 20, 30 films. So it's like when
Okay.
someone like that, comes to you and says like, this is a filmmaking decision you need to change, or how about you try this? Like you're really going to listen to these people. I just sort of dove headfirst into watching all these foreign films and, talking with all these film people in the Czech Republic who are just, great people to learn from.
Oh, I imagine so. I also want to ask a question about international filmmakers. There are some on this side of the fence, and I'm one of them, who have a huge appreciation for international filmmakers because it seems like they do a lot of not so much art house, but they bring something to the table that might be different or not. I just feel like there's a different vibe, a different spice, a different something. Would you agree with that? Having spent time out of country?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even have to spend time out of country to agree with that because I love international films to the point where I almost like them more than American films, to be
Nice.
honest. I'm a huge just lover of all things movies and movie history. Like if I haven't
Sure.
seen a movie, I need to see it, sort of thing. So, I've been on an obsession with Fassbender recently and Kozlovsky, and I love these people because, I'm just you're not used to seeing, these type of movies made, these scenes, these choices with music. And it
Right.
just, as a filmmaker, why limit yourself with the English audience? Like Japanese, French, Italian, all these cinemas are equal or better to American cinema, in my opinion.
Oh,
So
no, I don't disagree. You don't wanna diss on your own country, but you're like, they're just they have different processes, different cameras, different ways that they shoot. Even the writing is different. It's fascinating. So take that away from this, folks. International is where it's at to some degree, and very entertaining and just beautiful pieces, you betcha. So, your piece, whenever you're ready. 7-minute film. Okay, I haven't asked anyone this, so I'll ask you because 7 minutes is a short film. You could have easily gone on much longer with this, in my opinion. Not that it's not good exactly where it is, but talk a bit about determining duration in your mind. How do you figure that out as a filmmaker?
I mean, at the very basis, it just starts with the script, and you think, I have 1 page, 1 minute, but that really never is how it ends out. I think when we wrote the script, it was probably 13 or 14 pages long. But from the conception of this movie, me and Theo, who's the actor and who wrote the script, we wanted to do something simple, essentially, something that was a scene, something that had an impact, but didn't last too long. And we could do in sort of a cheap and easy way in one long production day. It was a 15-hour day, but we got it done. And yeah, we just wanted to do something simple. I think that's really what it was.
Absolutely. And so I'm normally asking people in 3 sentences. We'll start off with this. Tell everybody whenever you're ready in 3 sentences, what's the story about?
So it's about an actor who's arriving for a robot voiceover. As he auditions for the part, he can't seem to give the director what he wants. Um,
Excellent.
I'd say that's basically it.
That is
Yeah.
perfect. Absolutely. You betcha. First off, you're in the film itself, and that doesn't normally happen. In fact, most of the directors I talk to are constantly saying, of course, I don't want to be in front of the camera. It's almost like most directors are like, yeah, two different worlds, director over here, actor over here, but you're in the film. So, why this selection to be in the film? And how do you feel? You play the director in the film. So, are you really playing yourself, or did you purposely try to be the opposite of yourself in the role?
I've never acted in a film before this film. I
Oh,
would say that I acted in this film partially out of necessity because, you know, when you're searching for actors, especially with people you don't know, you never really know what you're going to get. But
right.
when we wrote this script, a angry, pissed off director is something that's I can play very well. I mean, it's pretty close to home, I'd say. I wouldn't say that guy is my character, but anyways, but
Hmm.
it's easy for me to play a extreme mean version of myself. So it was a fun process, but definitely something that I need to learn from because in the situations where it's a two shot, say, on me and Jade, who's the actress who plays the
Right.
assistant. It was a new experience to not be able to watch her and be in the scene. So I caught myself in the takes that we didn't take, sort of looking at her and breaking from my character because I wanted to watch and direct what she was doing, but I
Right.
needed to be in the scene myself. So
That
in the
makes sense.
future, like I'd say that when you are acting and stuff, you need a really strong script supervisor who's really on the same page as you because in
Mhm.
those scenes you just can't direct. To an extent, you can pause and say, let's do this, let's try this, but it's hard to be live and be active in the scene and watching. So that was definitely a difficulty, and it sort of just made me respect guys like John Cassavetes even more because it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
it blows my mind. I can't imagine that you're such a strong image maker and director, but simultaneously you're the star and a tour de force as an actor. It's crazy to me.
No kidding, right? You did this according to IMDb, $500 budget. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive just because obviously I talk to people with 50,000 and higher, and look where you are. You're at an Oscar qualifying festival. So clearly it's pretty badass that it only took you $500 to do that. So we want to talk about that. Everybody would love to make a movie with $500. It's that simple. So tell me a bit about, I'm guessing because you were younger, of course, that's kind of what you could come up with. But I mean, realistically speaking, now that you are where you are, would you recommend that? Meaning if push comes to shove and somebody's like, I got a couple $100, can I even do this? How feasible and practical is that?
Yeah, the answer is yes. If you have an idea and you have any amount of money, like you said earlier, everybody has iPhones nowadays. They all shoot 4K.
Right.
You gotta make the decision to make it, regardless of the resources, because the $500 is me and Theo pooling money together and collecting the stuff for the set, and
Yep.
we're not paying anybody on the set. We got to convince people our age to come work on our project, and that's the most fun part about it because it's like I tell my friend, come work as a grip on my project, and he says, well, I need a script assistant. I say, I'm in. So it's
Yeah.
like this back and forth where if you can form a strong group of people who are just struggling to make films like you can have this free crew and you can have these people who are willing to help you make films. So I'd say really any amount of money you have, especially with our technology nowadays, like go shoot, go make a film.
You betcha. Now, when were talking about the description of your film, clearly you have a gentleman coming in and he's doing a voice acting, of course. Most actors all have a side shuffle of voice acting, so it would appear. Like literally everyone I talk to, yeah, I got a voiceover. They all need that, which is fine. However, I found it interesting that you took the voice acting. It was just so absurd. That's just the whole point. If most of us are familiar with what voice acting really is, it's typically telling a story or an
Yeah.
audiobook or whatever. In this case, you have this obsession and it's just so absurd. So when you were thinking about the voice actor, why the robot thing? Why not something else? I mean, I thought of a couple different things that would be even crazier than that. But what made you gravitate to that particular thing?
I would say that it's more from Theo in terms of the original idea. He was auditioning last year to be an actor, going to various places,
Sure.
and he had a pretty hilarious gig where he was doing a voiceover for the Spanish dub of Too Hot to Handle, the reality show. And after that show, he basically texted me, is like, I'm gonna write a script about this. This is insane. I don't know why we chose Robot. It was interesting to play on the idea of like this actor's acting badly, not only because he's a bad actor,
Well,
but also
right.
because he's a robot. And that just felt like a really ridiculous, absurd concept. And I love a film that has just incredible focus on a really ridiculous idea. I guess that was our strategy.
Well, and the thing is too, if when you guys watch the movie, this thing that I've noticed is he honestly really never really understands just how absurd he is or off the wall. He also doesn't realize that his ability, I think he keeps thinking, I'm the it's not me, it's that. Like I have this ability. It's definitely not me. Has to be them, but I'll give in, so he tries these various tactics. Where'd you come up with the whole, so I love Cher. So the whole singing of the Cher, I'm like, this is so cool. How did you get that? Or was that, I could almost see the actor actually suggesting that. I was thinking that. I'm like, was that his idea?
Well, yeah, so that was Theo's idea. And it was essentially the question was, we know at some point this is going to turn into a full-on like EDM dance party. What's the most ridiculous song choice that we can choose that's still recognizable and feels
Right.
like people are like, oh, I'm bobbing my head to this. This is very weird.
Right.
I give him the credit for that, and it was a great choice. That song's hilarious. So
Absolutely. Now, I'm not sure if I can say this or not, because there's this point where the assistant and him are pushing him to do something,
yeah, yeah.
There's that inappropriateness
There's
in that.
robot love. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking to myself, were y'all just watching some inappropriate stuff and thinking, yeah, let's make him do this? You know what I mean? I'm like, that's kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
Kind of inappropriate.
Yeah. So I mean, I say I definitely lean to the inappropriate side of, I want to sort of at times shock people,
Sure.
show them things that they're like, that's a weird idea, two ideas put together. But yeah, I mean, it really just came to the point where it's like this film is just about like breaking apart a normal situation as it gets
Yes.
more and more absurd. And it's like, what's more absurd than a assistant saying she wants to have sex with a robot? Um, so that's really where it came from. And at first we were not as extreme with how we wrote those scenes where she like gets really into it, but she sort of thought like, she told us like, I need to go harder, I need to go more aggressive with this, it's going to be way funnier if I really take this over to the edge. And
Well,
we said, absolutely.
you betcha. Now, tell us a bit about her background, the assistant. Did you cast her specifically because, like, when she was auditioning, she gave that above and beyond performance? Or what was it about her that stood out?
She's a good friend of Theo's from Berkeley. They both studied acting there. And when we were sort of looking around for actors, he was just sending me, various people. And she actually had a photo on her Instagram, one of her headshots where she was wearing glasses and she had this sort of almost secretarial assistant look, I'd say. And as soon as he sent me the picture, I was like, oh, the look is sort of perfect. And then when I met her, she was great. It worked out really well.
That's neat. So, I know it might sound silly to some people, but on the acting side of things, do you think that filmmakers ever do that? Do you think they kind of scour around on social media? So, because I do hear some actors say sometimes we can't put that on social media because you don't know who's looking. Do you think that's fair to say? I mean, is that a common practice for filmmakers?
I think it's a matter of just searching, you got to use all your resources. You got to, use Backstage. You got to look on Instagram. You got to text your friends, you got to text your friends of your friends. It's really just a matter of, and I think this goes for most things in production, of just finding the right fit and using, everything in your, in your basket to make that happen. So
You
I
betcha.
wouldn't give any preference to any sort of route, I'd say, until I find
Gotcha.
one that just gives me the best actors every time.
Well, right. Another production question, because I heard you say this was shot in a very, very, very long night. So, for future reference for yourself on your next project, is that the smart way to go? I guess the practicality oftentimes dictates we have to do this for whatever reason. But now that you know and you've had that experience, would you try to do that again? Is there some bonus besides the obvious, meaning one day? Or would you say, hey, we're not putting that kind of pressure on ourselves again?
Yeah, so I think it certainly depends on the subject matter of the film, because I think as a director and honestly as a producer as well, like you need to be thinking about how the crew, the actors, the people on set are feeling.
Yep.
And if you can match that feeling to the feeling of the movie and not too extreme of a way to where it's like it's a terrible situation, just like for instance, like, staying up late night in this banal recording studio sort of worked well because, everyone was feeling this sort of strange like situation. But I wouldn't say it's a route for every film. Like, of course,
Right.
I would have liked more time, but in this situation particularly, it worked well because the feel that the crew was feeling on the crew sort of matched the feel of the people in the scene, and it made my job as an actor definitely much easier.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Now I see that film has gotten one nomination so far. We're hoping because tonight Hollyshorts got the big event. We're hoping that you get another one and or win would be great. Where are you going to be headed next after this? Because obviously I'm sure that people will want to see it again. Is it staying in the circuit?
Yeah, so we've been submitting to a bunch of festivals and we're just
Okay.
waiting on the deadline. Super excited to hear back.
Oh, no kidding. Now, if I were to ask you, so what's next for Benjamin Feldman? What's he working on now?
Yeah, so I'm currently working actually at a company called Invisible Universe, and we are working on a 31 episode spoof of a reality show. And it's 1 to 2 minutes each. So I'm a writer and a producer on that show, which is super cool. And I'm excited because the release is in a month. So that's what I'm working on at this very moment. At the same time, I am developing other short scripts as well as features. And the hope is that by the end of this year, I have another good short film ready to start submitting to these festivals.
That would be awesome. Absolutely. Now, if you guys listened again, his name is Benjamin Feldman. I'm going to tell you where you can find him. So I have listed here Film Freeway, IMDb, Vimeo, and LinkedIn. Wonderful. Well, congratulations, Benjamin. Thank you so much for spending time talking to me about the film. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.